From sunrise to sunset, recycling is more than a job. It's a way of life. Early mornings, late nights, hard work that turns the old into something new. Recyclers power the economy, and ReMatter is built to power you. Making those long days easier with smarter tools like scale ticketing, payments, dispatch, and everything in between. We bring it all together so you can focus on what matters most, growing your business and serving your community. Driven by the spirit of recyclers everywhere. ReMatter. Built for recycling. Built for you.
And this
feel like I'm a disc jockey.
Welcome back, everyone, to the ReMA 2025 live stage. I am Rob Wise from Metal Conversions, co-chair of the Young Executives Council, and I'm happy to be here with Abhijay Goenka, one of my vice chairs, and also two absolute legends of the industry. Yeah, Barry, talking about you. We have past BIR president Barry Hunter and past chair of the artist formerly known as ISRI, Arnie Gashman, here with me as well. And we're excited to bring you a session lovingly called Bridging the Generational Gap. Yeah, we're excited to get started here. The idea for this, between Century Club and YEC, we wanted to highlight some of the differences that we've all noticed over the years, but also some of the common ground that we also share in this industry that I think we all love, right? I'm pretty sure. So, listen, I want to start just by throwing this out to Arnie and Barry first. Roots in the industry, right? How you got into the industry, and the greater conversation of how the industry has evolved from the family-run small business to sort of where we are today, where there are small and medium-sized businesses, but now also multinational corporations involved in recycling. So, Barry, a little bit of background from you, where you come from, and sort of how you got into the biz.
What time does this session end?
Clock's ticking, Barry.
Clock's ticking. Well, basically born into the business. When your grandfather, your father, we were always in the business until they retired, or my grandfather earlier. Basically, you heard the conversation all along. So you literally born into the business, although I never trained to be in the business, and nor would my father want me in the business at that time. We were a small scrapyard, family owned. My grandfather came over from someplace in Europe, horse and wagon, peddled coal in the winter. In the summer he had nothing to do, so he picked up scrap. After a while he was able to get a small little piece of property at a scrap yard. After that, Dad took it over with my Uncle Jack, and eventually a highway came through and took the family business. At that point, I'm with a child and a house, and I got no job. So I used to look at Mush Oberman's book, Scrap Age, and say, there's a whole industry out there I don't know of anything about. They wear ties, they wear jackets. From that point on, I joined another company and continued to progress till I became very active with both ISRI at the time. Then our business became international, went over to the BIR, and saw the growth of the industry in that manner. Now, we're at a different phase, and the phase is all you people out there, and where does the legendary stories of the industry assist your projects, assist a younger generation. And the heritage aspect of the business, I think, is critical to maintain. I've always felt that way. And hopefully, with the new organization, we'll feel similar. And we can continue education and the history at the same time and developing, ReMA. And that's what I got to say.
Yeah, so I think you hit on a bunch of great things there that we're going to get to more as we go forward here in the next 45-ish minutes that we have in front of you all. But Arnie, I want to get your story as well, because everyone, what I've learned in this business over the 12-ish years that I've been involved is that everyone's got a story, and some of them are absolutely incredible to hear. So I want to hear from you. What's Arnie's story?
Well, my grandfather came to this country illegally, jumped ship, and he started his business from loading a rail car with a wheelbarrow in a foundry. Learned English, took to a cart with a horse, and then rode the rails to different cities and shipped scrap back. That's how we started the business. That was 114 years ago.
Wow.
I'm the third generation.
You're not that old, are you?
Yeah, I am. I've been in the business with a paycheck for 67 years.
Wow.
But I started actually cleaning parking meters when I was about 3.5 years old, right at the end of World War II, and I got paid for it. So that, I guess you could say, was a benefit. But now I have my son in the business, and he is the chief operating officer and doing a fabulous job. He worked away for 6 or 7 years before he came into the business, and that's the requirement we have now for anyone of our family. There's only 2 of us in our family in the business right now.
Wow. No, that's incredible. And having family in the business is something I never personally had, right? I'm the first generation of my family to be in this business, and that's why it's so humbling and great to be sitting here with the 3 of you who all have family ties to the business, and that's where I go to Abhijay here and just give everyone the Cliff Notes version of your entrance to the business.
How are you going to make me follow after those stories?
Yeah, well.
Great story.
Yeah, well, I've been in the business for about 10 years. It's also a family business. We are in the export space, so we procure metals across North America. We sell it internationally. My father started the business when he came over from India back in the late 70s. He used it as a way to establish our family and establish himself in this country. And then, when I growing up, he had me working in the back office, making contracts, working wherever I could, joining him, visiting some shredders, visiting whatever scrapyards he was working with. And, now I've been in it for 10 years, looking to try to grow the business, trying to learn from legends, and trying to navigate the international markets. But, yeah.
Easy stuff.
Easy.
All the easy stuff that we're dealing with these days. Nothing crazy going on in this business or in the world in general. So nice and easy for everyone. But I think it's so interesting to hear everyone's story, the family ties, which I'm honestly a little bit jealous of. I think it would have been, now that I've been in this business for 12 years, I honestly can't see myself ever leaving. And I work for a small family-owned company now, and I'm blessed to be able to do that. But I've also worked for the very large company, which became publicly traded. And I'd love to get some perspective from you, Barry, first, just on those changes in the industry over that time you've been in. Not maybe from the very beginning, but what's happened in the space here that's sort of led to multinational, Fortune 500, big steel mills being interested in running what we would consider to be traditional scrapyards, and how you've seen that evolution through your career here.
I think there's 2 key words that come to my mind, and that is profitability and volume, or profitability versus volume. The trend now is to either decide, it appears to me, again, I'm retired, so I might be totally wrong. Then you have 2 options. Profitability is based on buying as cheap as you can and selling as high as you can and keeping your overhead as minimal as you can. The other side of that coin is volume. If you want to be attractive to the major players, you got to generate volume. So I think there is more and more focus on exit strategies among the family businesses today than there was years ago. And, that's a trend, that's a decision that, I look to the younger generation and say, do your people feel the same way? I mean, you have people in your group that are probably with major companies and also family companies. Do you see, I'll turn the tables on, do you see the goals as being The end zone being, I'm going to sell my company, or I'm going to get value for my property. That's another scenario you could look at. Or I'm going to remain small and focus on profitability and maybe bring in my son, my son-in-law, my grandson, whatever it is, to maintain the family structure. As we sit here and hear the conversation, the family business is starting to dwindle. And, I think there are decisions that have to be taken as to which direction you want to have your end zone touchdown.
Yeah, you brought up a couple of great points there, which led me to 50 more questions that are in my mind, so I'm going to try to
I'm available after
Yeah,
this.
I know you are, to keep us moving as best I can. But Abhijay, he brought up something, Barry brought up something fascinating to me there. And as a, the next generation coming in, and you're, with a company your dad started, and sort of what would you say in response to Barry and how you see the future of your company, the company your dad's helped build, and where it's headed now, and now as a new father, everybody. New father with an infant at home. Congratulations to Abhijay and his wife. But how do you see that path forward?
This topic's actually really, really top of mind because, as you mentioned, it really impacts how you manage your day-to-day, what are your goals, and where are you striving to go. So the way my father has built the business, the way we continue to operate is focused on cash flows, right? We're effectively a trading company where I view us as a bank and trying to rotate our capital. But at the end of the year, we look at how many times have we turned our capital and how have our relationships been built and how is that trending. But we are largely equity driven. We don't take on that much debt. And the negative of what we're doing is, hey, if we wanted to exit, it's very hard for another company to acquire us at a good multiple because it's based on my father. It's based on me. We don't have any assets on the ground that another company can just leverage and put into their big machine. Whereas I deal with a lot of other peers who are growing their company, and their mindset's totally different, right? They're looking at how can I most effectively leverage the business, deploy assets to build that volume, so that way that EBITDA multiple, whatever that multiple is maximized. And that is a fantastic way of doing business as well, because that is repeatable. If they're really good at it, they'll do that for X number of years, sell, make a good amount of money, and they can reinvest it. And that could be their long-term strategy, or they could do it once and they cash out. But both are good, but it fundamentally changes how you drive your day-to-day business plan.
Yeah, well, I'm interested, Arnie, to get your perspective here, because you have a son who's now, you mentioned, in the business as the chief operating officer. So perspective to give here as far as next generation and how you see that?
Well, I think you have to back up and say succession. I ended up buying my family out of the business with a leveraged buyout. I owed everybody, coming from nowhere. And so when I did that, I said, I know what happens in a family business. I'm going to hire a family business consultant who happened to be a doctorate in psychology and a master's in business. And we started running the business in 1985 on a profit center volume understanding, like Barry talked about, not too much capital imploding. And from there, starting about 10 years later, we started to acquire companies that were not succession planning. So I ended up buying 3 companies where the owners didn't have anyone to take over. As he talked about multiples, we bought them at the right multiples because they had no place to go. So I think that's part of what you have to look at. Right now, I have 2 grandchildren, both males, out looking at this business. And they're in very high-tech business, one of them, and the other one in a very data analytical business. So they're getting their backgrounds in other areas to bring to our company. And we are not opposed to looking at new products or new things. We were in the new steel business for almost 50 years. I finally got out of that because it wasn't an easy business, just like scrap.
Yeah. And I kind of jumping off from there, you guys all had family in the business. I'm wondering, as the culture, the landscape has changed and shifted so much from the smaller to the bigger conglomerates coming in. What is there pressure on you to get your family involved? How do you strike that balance with your son, for instance, or with your grandkids about how to I mean, you have to let them go out and explore the world, right? And do their own thing and come to the business naturally, the business that we all love. We're sitting here because we love it. So how do you strike the balance? And then Abhijay, after that, how did your dad strike the balance of not forcing you? And maybe he did force you. Maybe he's standing behind you right now. I have no idea. But how do you strike that balance, Arnie, between letting your child or your grandchild explore the world and maintaining the succession plan for the family business? What is that dynamic like?
Well, the first thing I would say there is that with the help of the coach that we had, I had to learn my role, and he had to learn his. So Eric was out of the business. He worked for a major scrap industry for 7 years before he came into my business. At that point, we had a decision. What I recognized was there can't be two bosses. So my job was to become a coach, and his job was to become the offensive and the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So that's the way we run the business. And ultimately, if he has a problem, I keep up with the things. I know what's going on, but he calls the shots, and I respect that.
Yeah, no, and again, I think that's important. Boundaries and some of those things, I mean, that's what you're touching on there. And learning from other outside forces, whether it's a consultant or somebody else you trust in the business. Abhijay, how did you come to either love the business, or, I mean, how did that work with your dad coming from the family-owned business?
Yeah, it's just a funny story. Sorry, I'm the youngest of three. My older brother, who's 10 years older than me, very much wanted to go into the business. Fought a lot of pressure, but ultimately went to undergrad, did business, and then my dad didn't let him join the business. Pushed him into going into medicine, and that's what he is now, a doctor. With me growing up, I was given the choice to do whatever I wanted, as long as it was joining the family business. So that's what I did. I did work for a few years outside of it. But it's been great. I mean, anyone that joins this business, I'll be honest, when I joined the business, I didn't join because I thought scrap metal was recyclable metal was something very, very cool. I joined the business because you got to travel a lot, you got to meet people from different parts of the world, but then you fall in love with the industry and you see how critical we are, how impactful we are, and that's something that has stayed with me, which is why, like you said, I will never leave the industry. But kind of touching on what you were talking about before, if I hadn't joined the business, it's a big problem. Right? Because as you said, the multiple of the value of your company dramatically drops if you don't have succession planning. So I have my daughter. Hopefully in X number of years, she also wants to join the business. But you have to plan so that, hey, if she does, there's a business that she can take over and do well. If she doesn't, my business value doesn't suddenly tank because there's no one else and we're desperate to get rid of the business. So you have to kind of walk that line where you structure it so that it is valuable for another company, but it's also valuable for your succession if they want to join.
Yeah. No, I think that's all great perspective. And you mentioned something there about the relationships, building them, not only with, inner family, but also, Arnie touched on, getting together with your family members and talking it out and having a clear-cut vision, but also the outside of your family, those relationships. And that's sort of what's brought us all here, right, to ReMA 2025, is those relationships and the networking that it offers. I'm interested in the progression from Barry and Arnie's perspective of the association, where we sit today. What's brought us to this stage as members of the Century Club and the Young Executives Council is ReMA as a whole. And, interested in your paths through the associations and sort of how the association has progressed. Barry, I'll start with you. Talk to me about how you came to be a member of whatever association it was called when you first became a member, and also
it was called Earth.
and how we kind of progressed to where we are today from your perspective.
Boy.
Speechless Barry is not something we were prepared for, to be honest.
How to paraphrase it in a short period of time when you had so much time involved is difficult. My involvement started with the local chapter, ISIS. Bad word, I understand, but that's what it was. And when I got involved with the local chapter, I was with my father's and uncle's small business. So my involvement was limited. If they had a meeting, I went. I never attended national conventions or anything like that. It took the move away from that small scrapyard to a larger facility that I saw there was a whole industry out there that I could tap into with what I knew. And my background was the physical. When the decision came as to whether or not what my next move was, I was offered a position with a major trading house, and it looked good, New York City, tie, jacket, the whole works. And my father literally said, "That's not where you belong." He said, "You were working with your uncle for about 12 years to learn metal." And he said, "That's where you belong. You know how to run a crane, you know how to run a forklift. To sit in an office in New York, you haven't got a clue what to do." And he was absolutely right. So the associations were not only with the yard, my training ground, where I learned all the names of the metal, to this, to that, and everything else like that. That becomes another whole topic. The associations offered me the opportunity to meet people, to find markets, to define markets. My love was the export market. I was on the East Coast. The East Coast had a boat that could load and take it to Europe and all that kind of stuff. So I grew from that point. Then came the opportunity to move from ISIS, the combination of ISRI, to the BIR, which then offered me the opportunity to learn more and more about the export business. So the associations to me, were what I could get from them as compared to what I could give to them. I gave them a lot. They gave me more.
I think some of that's you've given a lot. I think some of that's debatable. I don't want you to undersell the amount you've given, not only the industry as a whole, but the associations. I mean, we wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for your continued involvement. You're and Arnie both, and the entire Century Club. There is no YEC and CC meeting without CC, right? And that's sort of why we're here and trying to bring us together, because there is so much common ground in what you're talking about. These relationships, we wouldn't be sitting at this table if we hadn't been in these meetings virtually and then together here an hour ago for the first time in person. We've been doing this virtually for months now, getting ready to come up here and talk in front of you all. And the relationship building of the association is really the backbone, what it's built on, regardless of what it's called. But I'm interested in your perspective too, Arnie, of the progression from ISIS and NARI to ISRI to ReMA, and sort of how you've seen that and how it's impacted your business and your career.
Well, I probably attended my first ISIS meeting when I was 18 months old, Chicago. My parents told me. And from that, there were a bunch of young people running around the chapter meetings. That was a relationship that still goes on today. I get calls from these folks at my birthday and vice versa. That's how deep the relationships can go in this industry. When I grew up in the scrap industry, I attended many of the chapter meetings, both NARI and ISIS in those days. And my dad introduced me to people. I've gotten to meet people who are legends in this industry, and to this day, I admire that opportunity to be able to do that. I think one of the most important parts of it was that I was 27 years old and lost both my boss and my immediate operation manager within the same year. There was no one else left, so I took over as general manager of a company at 27. And from that, I recognized I didn't have all the experiences that I needed in the mentoring. I had a grandfather who would come in a couple hours a day, but that was all. But that was great in its own. So I decided then it was time to get into the industry from a educational standpoint, going to chapter meetings and stuff. And what I can tell you is I got, I guess, what you would call a doctorate degree over the years, because people would show me things and tell me things, and every time I'd come to a convention or a chapter meeting, I would take away something valuable to take back to my business. To me, that is part of it. The other part of it was, and I'd say this almost unequivocally, every major city in this country, I can call a number, somebody will answer, and immediately we got a connection. And I do that for people. I've done it twice this week and vice versa. So those are the relationships that you cannot duplicate.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, and one of the overarching themes is you mentioned ISIS, NARI, ISRI, now what is now ReMA, and sort of the overarching theme of that is the meat and potatoes of this is not different. It's not. The names have changed. Some of the faces have changed. New people are coming into the industry all the time, and some people are leaving, retiring. But the backbone of the association is the connections, the shared experience, the education that we're all getting. And we talked inside when we met beforehand here, and just talked about the evolution and how we're all still learning even today about how fast the industry is moving technology-wise, and really just the way geopolitically things are moving quickly with how things are made and manufacturing and everything else that's going on tariff-wise and other things, and how we're all have so much to learn still. I've been in the business 12 years. We've got a lot of experience on this stage today, and there are a lot of days that still feel like my first day.
Can I interject something there that I think is critical to everyone that's here in this industry today? So I came from ISIS and NARI. I was officers in both over the years. There was a need for those two to come together. It was a need for ISRI to move to the next level and embrace other parts of this industry. And the reason for that is that the public really doesn't understand what we do and how valuable we are. And the only way we could get there was to be able to have a unified voice. I commend the leadership that's here today because you are evolving what we started. I hope that in the years to come, people will appreciate more how important those decisions are today that will be moving this industry forward.
Yeah, no, and that is great perspective. I think we talked about this inside the progression of just the language, the verbiage that we use from junk to scrap to recycled materials, and all the things that encompasses. Right, sustainability and all these buzzwords that we love to use so much. But we wouldn't be sitting here without it. We are better united. I think we've always understood that, and we understand today now more than ever, especially with all the challenges that we all face. Abhijay and I met through ISRI, ReMA. I'm interested. Barry, I'm going to go to. How did you and Arnie actually meet? How did that happen?
I'm sure it was at a board meeting. I'm sure it had to be at a board meeting.
He was the underground.
Wait a minute. Are we getting ourselves in trouble here?
Yeah, he was the underground PR guy that created Weird Productions, which was a way that we had levity at a lot of our meetings, because believe me, in our meetings, some of those meetings would go into 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
I can't imagine with him that we would ever run over time.
But it was hysterical.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I would ask you guys a question on the other side here. What do you think is the best value a Century Club can offer to the young executives?
Oh, yeah. Abhijay, on the spot, go.
Want me to take lead on this?
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, listen, we've talked about it a lot. The industry is constantly changing. There's a lot of pressures to figure out whether you do want to, like we talked about earlier, hit those multiples or just focus on cash flow, focus on how to maintain relationships as new technology and new tools get introduced. But you guys have done it for decades and across changes. And you can differentiate what are fads and what are temporary trends versus what fundamentally leads to success in this industry. Both during positive times and negative times. And that wisdom, that guidance is critical. And I think it all comes down to, one of the reasons I love this industry is how do you build and maintain relationships the way you guys have done it over decades?
Yeah, I agree with that. I would just add, I've always said that this is an imperfect industry full of imperfect people, myself included. And I think we have so much we can learn from not only our successes, but also our failures. And, we all have failures in this business. There's no doubt about that. There's things that came and went and didn't catch on, and we've all made mistakes and lost some money at times, and nobody's been perfect, but it's brought us to where we are today. And that, those who don't learn history are bound to repeat it. I think that, Barry, is the number one thing. And also just the guidance that we get from, hey, we tried this 20 years. You aren't the first person who ever did this. And sometimes that little bit of humbling is what we need to hear. And it's tough to hear, but it's necessary to hear. And we learn a lot more from our failures than our successes, and I truly believe that. So we've got a lot to offer each other, I believe.
I go back to what Arnie just brought up and put a smile to my face. I mean, we were much smaller, obviously, as history, and ISIS before that. We were more of a fraternity than a trade association, to be all honest with you. I couldn't wait for the quarterly board meetings because I was going to see my friends. When my daughter drove to Michigan with her car to attend the university, her car broke down in Ohio. She called me up and said, "Dale, what do I do?" I said, "Call the local scrap guy, have him call me." The guy picked her up, took her car in. These were the things that were tangible to the relationships that we grew. And I look around now and I see young people, and I just hope you have those same kind of opportunities to bond as an industry. The change in name is dramatic for us. I feel that way with Arnie, because we were the scrap business. Now it's the recycling business. 10 years from now, it could be the environmentalist. I don't know. But I think our tales and our almost what could be considered as industry folklore shouldn't be lost. These are interesting times. How Arnie and I are both alive with all the regulations that go on with the industry today is a miracle in itself, I think. But it's important, and I hope that the younger generation will tap not only into our education and our trading knowledge and this and that, but also the experiences of learning what friendships truly mean. Although you may see each other 4 times a year, what those meant to us as two friends in this industry.
Yeah, no, no, that's incredible perspective. And that's why I think Abhijay and I are happy to be here on behalf of Young Executives Council, because if we keep telling the stories live well past us, right?
Somebody's going to believe them too.
So, but now I've heard it, and we'll tell somebody, and they'll tell somebody, and it might be lore someday, but it'll still be getting told 30 years from now, 40 years from now, when I might be sitting in this seat and there's some young guy over here trying to tell me about what I need to be doing or whatever. And I'm interested quickly. You told us inside earlier how ISIS and NERI became ISRI, and I just think it's a funny little anecdote. Why don't you how did it happen?
Well, I think if I remember correctly, we were in Canada at a restaurant. There was probably about 30 or 40 of us sitting around the table, the leadership of ISIS, the leadership of NERI. We were trying to come up with the name, and as I remembered, it was quite contentious because everybody in those days was afraid of which way this organization was going to go. Those of us that had been in both kind of understood that it was going to be a marriage. Ironically, it became a marriage because the IS was Institute of Scrap, and the RI was Recycling Industries, became ISRI. And we came out of that, I think, as a unified dinner. After a little libation, everybody enjoyed it. And before that, it was a lot of tension. Yeah. So I think that was the birthplace of it. And then later we came up with logos. And it's interesting when a couple of days ago, or I guess a couple of months ago, when ReMA officially became the name, but it changed a generation. I mean, there's no question about it. And as Barry said earlier, my hope is that although the name changes, the personality and the relationships don't.
Yeah, and again, one thing I want to touch on is just how much of a relationship-driven business this still is. We know that there's been lots of changes in technology and how we communicate, and you know, those quarterly meetings you're talking about that you look so forward to might be because you didn't keep in contact as much with those folks, and now because of the technology and the Zoom calls and all this stuff we can do. I mean, we've met on Zoom how many times now over the last 6-7 months, and we had never met in person. But we knew a lot about each other and how we communicate and sort of these things, putting this together. So I think I'm interested in your guys' perspective on those changes and how those things have shaped where we are in the industry now, the communication, the technology, and how those things have changed. Abhishek, you got
Yeah, just building on the same question, an insight I'd love to hear from you guys is I feel when running the business today, we all value relationships. We all know that's important for success. But especially with the technology that's been introduced, there's this pressure that we got to talk to as many people as we can, as quickly as we can. If we need a quote, you need to be talking to a number of people from all parts of the world. And there's this dichotomy of, hey, I want to value relationships, but I also need to be, busting people over the head and utilizing technology and making it almost as transactional as possible to make sure I get the best possible price. And finding that balance between the two, I find a challenge. So how do you guys navigate that? And where do you find yourselves on that seesaw?
Barry, that's you.
It's going to be, again, relationships. Let's just talk about that. You have everybody in the hall. Everybody's a good friend, but everybody's basically in the same business. Either you're selling equipment or something like that, but you have more of the brokerage situation. You have more of a situation of somebody who is looking to buy a container, buy a truckload, buy this, call me if you have that. The other side of that coin, to grow your business, is where you're going to sell your material. That's going to be the hardest thing to do. Because the bigger companies, and I've seen it myself, it put me out of business basically. You used to court purchasing agents. You used to want to get to that mill, to make friends with that purchasing agent. That's a hard stretch to see from now, where I was, to the future. You're controlled by a computer. We need the material tomorrow. We only need X pounds of it. Your competition has put in this price. Your history of a delivery, you've been late 10 times. It's all in the computer. The idea, I was told by a purchasing agent that I was very close with that I can't have lunch with you anymore. It's not allowable. I could understand that. The trend of a trading, in my opinion, is here with the effort to buy the material that you're looking for from the scrap industry to a broker who can eventually get volume to that consumer. When the consumer says, I need 8,000 tons or 5,000 tons, somebody is there that can supply it. Individually, that would be one hell of a task. So I see a major transition in that scenario, that the growth of the industry that we see today, and we talked initially about the family business, again, the decision has been, do you grow your business to sell it based on volume? And that's the key, I think, a lot to the future.
Arnie?
Well, I look at it a little different than that, Barry, although I totally agree with what you're talking about, the formality. What I look at is, in my family, my grandfather had about a third grade education. He was able to read and write. My dad got a junior college. I was the first college graduate. My son, after him, learned computers, got into that and brought all that into the company. So I think part of it is the formalization of your business. So when in buying certain businesses, I was amazed that They didn't have any information. They basically bought over here and sold it over here, and they were happy because they made money, I think. As we related it, would you fly a 747 with no instruments? So ultimately, it becomes the formalization of a small business to know what the hell you're doing. And after that, you can build on the little things that become the big things. Service. You're not going to compete with General Motors if you're a small business. You're going to have to differentiate yourself. Service is one way. Regionality is another way. Flexibility. Having the right kind of management attitudes to be able, when the customer says, I need it, you can perform, or someone else has got to go ask somebody. So there's a talent here that has to be, how would I say, born within your group. And that culture is what I would call it. That culture goes from the smallest and oldest person there, the little guy down on wherever it is cutting the scrap, because it's got to be quality, all the way up to the CEO. And the second part of it is, it's not just down, it's down and up. Yeah. Everybody is on the same page. Everybody understands the mission. And if I'm out of line, I hear it. And even today, I have people call me and say, you got a problem, you need to do this, blah, 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 blah. And I'm open to that, because if you don't listen, pretty soon you're out of business.
I think there's another aspect that I'd like to bring up, and that is the availability of information. It is out there on the internet. Everybody can know the prices. So the idea of learning markets and everything else like that, and developing through your knowledge of markets, is disappearing also. Everything is out there.
Transparent.
So the idea of being able to say, well, I can upgrade it to this, I can upgrade it to that through my processing knowledge, that's also becoming a remote concept unless you are prepared to create a different product that can service a consumer better. That the shredder was a perfect example. We were, 3 foot and under, 4 foot and under, and here comes a nugget that I can now move up a conveyor and drop it directly into the furnace. So all the technology has assisted this industry like crazy. The electric furnace changed this business. That the electric furnace, and I'm a scrap guy, I'm metallics, changed the industry. Electric furnace uses 99% scrap in order to make the product. The open hearth furnaces that the American mills were reluctant to change to the electric furnace cost them the export market. So I think that, the ability to learn is not as critical as you're functioning to create quality, good product, on-time delivery, good relationship to your suppliers, not necessarily to the ultimate consumer, but to treat your customers fairly and honestly, because that person is going to know the markets as well as you are.
Yeah, so I'd actually like to jump off from that a little bit, and then I'll get your perspective, Abhijay, on this as well. I actually think there was an arc of time as technology started changing really, really quickly with all the stuff from shredding to downstreams to now the X-ray technology and all this other stuff we're using, where you could rely on technology alone, and a lot of people use that to float their businesses. They weren't worried about knowing the markets, knowing this, knowing that. But I actually see it the opposite way now. I think now there's so much technology readily available, we're getting back to a point where the relationship means more, because everybody has access to so many tools, to so many things, to so much information on the internet, to so much technology that they can buy, they can finance, they can do these things. Small companies put in equipment just like big companies. And I think we're now getting to the point where technology has come to a point where everybody has some, whether it's a computer, whether it's information knowledge, whether it's a piece of X-ray technology, that that these relationships are starting to become more important again, because there's less to differentiate us from each other technologically than there might have been the haves and the have-nots of a decade ago. Now everybody's a have. So what is it? You have to know the market still. I would much rather meet somebody in this hall, somebody new, or one of the people that I've met like Abhijay. Abhijay and I still talk because I know he is not reading from a computer screen. He has a brain. You've heard him here today. He's talking about EBITDA and, you know, this X amount of whatever. This is not a guy who's reading that or just learning it or repeating it from somewhere. And I think that is still important in this business. There are plenty of people who can read off a script. There are fewer people who can have an opinion, who can take in information, who can learn that information, and then go forward. And those are the people that we all want to do business with, I think. People who are honest, people who truly care about this business, and people who at the end of the day actually can know the product and can back it up. And I think that's what we've all wanted from the very beginning when it was horse and buggy, and we're talking about pulling a mule on the scale we talked about earlier,
right,
to full truckload quantities, complete cargo ships worth of stuff. That's an overarching theme that brings this group of unlikely friends together. Abhijay, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it exactly on the head. I fall victim to using technology to make things transactional, just try to get a number and get things done. But things that I've learned from my father, the things I'm learning from the Century Club is, just as you said, Rob, sit down, have a conversation, make sure the person you're talking with really is someone you want to have that relationship with, someone worth having that relationship with, who knows the business, who knows other people as well. Because when things go well, everything goes well. It's easy. It's when you start having issues, when you start trying to get creative, when you try to move the needle more so than the person next to you, where working with people that have that extra intel, that extra insight, that goes past just having the latest technology, really makes a difference. And that's the knowledge I'm trying to gain from the legends in the industry, so that way I can present that to the people I try to do business with, and that's how I try to differentiate myself from the market as well.
Yeah, so I hate to do this, but we're out of time. So if you want more information about any of us, I would direct you to ReMA's website. There's bios there of all of us. These guys have a great story to tell. I would encourage everyone to find a member of the Century Club, ask questions. We've got a lot to learn. I'm happy and honored that Abhijay and I got to share the stage with both of you today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope we get to do it again. We love YEC and CC to continue this partnership and bring you guys more of what you want to hear, because as different as we might seem, I think it's important to continue to connect us together, just like this industry has always been connected together. So for Abhijay, Arnie, Barry, I'm Rob Wise. Enjoy the rest of ReMA 2025. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.